Imagine waking up one day to find everything you believed in shattered. You're at the height of your life, and suddenly, the love of your life is gone. No explanation, no warning, just a note that says goodbye. But what if that note wasn't what you thought it was? It was the start of a new week. A Tuesday. The kind of day where you expect nothing extraordinary to happen. But little did I know, my life was about to change forever. My name is Logan Mitchell. I'm an architect, running a successful firm with a portfolio of impressive projects. Business was thriving, and on the outside, my life seemed perfect. But underneath all the success, there was an empty space. A space that had been left by Gabriella Ford. Gabriella. The love of my life. The one who had left me 10 years ago without an explanation, leaving nothing but a note. It was brief. Simple. But the words still burned in my mind every day. Logan, I've made a mistake. I need to leave. It's better for both of us if we go our separate ways. I didn't understand it at the time. We were happy, or so I thought. We had dreams of building a life together, and then, just like that, she was gone. Without a word, without a goodbye. I spent the next few years of my life building walls around my heart. I told myself I didn't need her. I moved on. I married Naomi, a wonderful woman. We built a life, a future. But no matter how much I tried to forget, Gabriella's absence haunted me. And then, on that Tuesday morning, everything came rushing back. It was just another normal day in the office. I was reviewing blueprints for a downtown office complex when my assistant Jenny knocked on my door. She had that look in her eyes, the one she got when there was news that would complicate my day. Logan, your 2 p.m. appointment is here early. The residential client for the custom home project. I glanced at my watch. It was only 1:30, but I didn't mind. Early clients usually meant eager clients, and eager clients meant smoother projects. Sure, send them in, I said, trying to focus on the plans in front of me. Jenny stepped aside and let the client into the room. I looked up, ready to greet another wealthy homeowner looking for a custom dream home. But when the door opened and she walked in, I froze. Standing there, looking as beautiful as she had 10 years ago, was Gabriella. Gabriella Ford. But now, she was Gabriella Dixon. The papers I had been holding slipped from my hands, scattering across the floor. It was like a moment out of a dream, or rather, a nightmare. She had the same look in her eyes, the same grace, the same beauty that had stolen my heart years ago. But now, there was something else. A quiet sadness, a wariness, like a person who had seen too much and was now guarded. "Hello, Logan," she said softly, her voice carrying the same warmth I remembered. But there was something different in it now. Something I couldn't place. "Gabriella," I said, my voice barely a whisper. It felt like I had forgotten how to speak. I had spent 10 years of my life wondering what had happened to her, why she had left me without a word. And here she was, standing before me, looking as though she had never left. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my words coming out in a rush. "Why are you here?" She looked at me with calm eyes. "I need an architect," she said, stepping into my office as if nothing had ever happened between us. "Your firm was highly recommended." I was struggling to process what was happening. Gabriella Dixon. Not Gabriella Ford. Married. The weight of the words crashed over me. Of course, she was married. 10 years was a long time. I had moved on too, or at least I had tried to. I had a wife now, Naomi. A woman who was kind, supportive, everything anyone could want in a partner. But she wasn't Gabriella. She wasn't the woman who had once been the center of my universe. I didn't recognize the name, I said, trying to keep my composure. Dixon. It doesn't ring a bell. But the truth was, her name hadn't mattered in years. She was Gabriella, and she always would be. What kind of project are you looking for? She gave a slight smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm looking to build a contemporary home in the Riverside district. Something modern, but warm. A place where my family can grow. Family. The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. She had a family now. I had always imagined a future with her, the two of us building a life together. But that dream had been shattered when she left. And now, here she was, talking about a family with someone else. I nodded slowly, doing my best to keep the conversation professional. I could feel the tension building in the room. That sounds beautiful, I said, even though it felt like my heart was being ripped apart with every word she spoke. As she began to describe her dream home, I couldn't help but think back to the last time we had been together. It had been in college, the final weeks before graduation. We had talked about our future, our plans. We were so certain of what was to come. But that certainty had crumbled in the blink of an eye when she left. And now, 10 years later, she was back. But this time, she wasn't mine. My mind was spinning. I kept looking at her, trying to make sense of the person sitting across from me. The Gabriella I had known was gone. In her place was a woman who was successful, composed, but who clearly had her own life now. And yet, despite everything that had changed, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was truly different. She was still the one I had loved, the one I had never truly gotten over. She paused mid-sentence, her gaze meeting mine. Logan, she said softly, there's something I need to ask you. Why didn't you respond to my letter? My heart skipped a beat. What letter? The letter I left for you. She seemed to hesitate, as though the words were difficult to say. The one asking you to meet me at Union Station if you wanted to be with me. I shook my head in confusion. I don't understand. I still have the letter you left for me. The one that said you were leaving and that it was better if we made a clean break. Her face paled. That's not my letter. Logan, I never wrote anything like that. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. My hands were trembling as I tried to grasp what she was saying. But it's the letter you left me, I said, my voice shaking. You said you were going back to California and that it was over. Gabriella's eyes were wide with disbelief. I never went to California, Logan. I waited at Union Station for hours, hoping you would show up. I waited for you to come and fight for us. I couldn't breathe. The letter I had carried with me for 10 years, the one that had convinced me she didn't love me anymore, the one that had broken me, was a lie. And the truth was worse than anything I could have imagined. I had been waiting for answers, but I had been waiting in the wrong place. The letter wasn't from her. Someone had played with our lives, and for 10 years, I had lived in the shadows of that betrayal. The truth was more painful than I could have imagined. But we still had a long way to go before we could uncover the full story. What if everything you thought you knew was a lie? What if the person you loved didn't leave you? What if they were waiting for you all along? The air between us was thick with the weight of what we had just uncovered. I could feel my hands trembling as I slowly lowered them from the letter. Gabriella was sitting across from me, her eyes wide with shock. We both had just uncovered something that had been hidden for 10 years. I stared at her. So, you never wrote that letter? No, Logan, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I never wrote it. I would never have said that to you. But I still have it. The letter I've carried around for a decade. My voice cracked with the weight of all the years of hurt, confusion, and unanswered questions. You said you were leaving. You said it was over. She shook her head. Logan, that wasn't me. That wasn't my voice. I could see the hurt in her eyes. It mirrored the same pain I had been living with for the past 10 years. The hurt of believing something that wasn't true. The hurt of thinking someone you loved didn't love you back. The hurt of waiting, of hoping, of dreaming about a future that would never come. You waited for me? I asked, almost not believing the words coming out of my mouth. You waited for me at Union Station? Gabriella nodded. I waited there for hours, Logan. Hoping you would show up. Hoping that you would fight for us. But you never came. And after that, I thought you didn't care. I thought I meant nothing to you. The room seemed to spin as everything I thought I knew about that day, about our lives, was slowly being turned upside down. She had waited. She had waited for me to come, and I never showed up. I had been living my life thinking she didn't love me anymore. But all along, I had been wrong. She hadn't abandoned me. She had been waiting, just like I had. How could this happen? I asked, my voice hoarse. How could someone switch our letters? Who would do that? I don't know, Gabriella said, her voice full of emotion. But I think we need to find out. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to comprehend everything that had just been revealed. The woman I had spent years mourning had never left me. She had been waiting. And someone we both trusted, had stolen that from us. I need to see my letter, I said suddenly, feeling an urgency I couldn't explain. I need to see it again. The one I kept. Gabriella nodded. I need to see mine too. If we're going to get to the bottom of this, we need to compare. I stood up, feeling the weight of the years pressing down on me. Let's go to your place, I said, my mind racing. Let's find the truth. Gabriella and I left my office in a daze. We drove in silence, each of us lost in our thoughts. I couldn't help but replay the events of that day in my mind. The day she left. The letter. The pain. And now, the truth that I had never known. When we arrived at her hotel, she led me inside to a quiet corner of the lobby. She was carrying a small wooden box. It was old, worn, and had been with her for as long as I could remember. A box full of memories. And now, it would be the key to unlocking everything that had been hidden from us. You still have it? I asked, noticing the box as she placed it on the table between us. Some things are too important to throw away, she said softly. Even when they hurt. She opened the box, and inside were a few small trinkets, mementos from our time together. A concert ticket. A photo from our first date. A note she had written to me during a long-distance phase. And, at the bottom, there it was. A letter. Her letter. Gabriella pulled it out, unfolding it carefully. This is the one I wrote, she said, her voice trembling. I reached out and took the letter from her. The paper was slightly crumpled, as though it had been read 100 times. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was hers. It was the Gabriella I had known. The one I had loved. I began to read the words, my heart beating faster with each line. My dearest Logan, I know we've been talking about what happens after graduation, and I want you to know that I'm willing to stay in Chicago if you want to build a life together. I've been offered a job here at a law firm, and I'm excited about the possibility of starting my career in the city where we fell in love. But I need to know that you feel the same way. If you love me the way I love you, meet me at Union Station tonight at 6 p.m. We can catch the 7:30 train to anywhere, or we can go home together and start planning our future. If you don't come, I'll understand that you're not ready for that kind of commitment, and I'll respect your decision. But I hope you'll come because I can't imagine my life without you in it. All my love always, Gabriella. I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of those words. This was the letter I should have received. This was the message I was meant to have, the message that could have changed everything. The message that would have brought me to her. I looked up at Gabriella, my heart aching with the realization. "This is the letter you wrote," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Logan. This is the letter I wrote. This is the letter I left for you." I felt the weight of it all crashing down on me. For 10 years, I had carried around the wrong letter. I had spent years in pain, thinking she didn't love me, thinking I had been abandoned. But the truth was, she had been waiting. She had been waiting for me to come, to fight for us. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "I don't know how we can fix this." Gabriella took my hand. "We can't fix what's been broken. We can't change the past. But we can understand it. We can know the truth." I nodded slowly, the gravity of the situation settling in. The truth was painful. It was painful to realize how much time had been wasted. How much we had lost. But it was also freeing. Because now, we knew. We knew what had really happened. We knew who had been responsible for the destruction of our love. But there was still one more question I needed answered. I looked at Gabriella, my voice steady now. Who did this to us? It was time to find out who had torn our lives apart, and why they did it. What if the betrayal was closer to home than we ever imagined? What if the person we trusted the most was the one who destroyed everything? Who did this to us? I repeated, the question hanging in the air between us like a cloud that wouldn't dissipate. Gabriella stared at me, her eyes full of disbelief. "Logan, I don't know. I wish I did. I've thought about it so many times. Who could be cruel enough to do this? Who could want to destroy us like this?" I didn't have an answer. But I could feel the anger building inside me. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just the fact that we had lost so many years of our lives because of someone else's malicious actions. It was the fact that someone had taken something so precious from us. They had stolen our future, and that was something I couldn't let slide. "We need to find out," I said, more determined than I had felt in years. "We can't let this go. We deserve to know the truth." Gabriella nodded, a look of resolve crossing her face. "I agree. We have to know who did this and why. But Logan, we have to be careful. Whoever did this could be dangerous. They've already caused so much pain." I understood what she meant. We couldn't just march in and start accusing people. Whoever had done this knew us, knew our relationship, and they knew how to hurt us the most. But that didn't mean we could just sit back and accept the damage they had caused. We needed answers. We needed closure. "I'll call Rodri," I said suddenly. The name slipped from my mouth before I even had a chance to think it through. But the moment it was out there, I knew it was the right thing to do. We need to talk to him. He was the one who had the most to gain from breaking us up. Rodri. My college roommate. My friend. Or so I thought. Looking back, I could see the signs. The way he had always been around when Gabriella and I were together. The way he'd always seemed to have a little too much interest in our relationship. But I never saw it for what it was, until now. Gabriella's face changed at the mention of his name. "Rodri," she said quietly, her voice full of emotion. I never trusted him. There was something about him that always felt off. But I never thought he would do something like this. I didn't either, I admitted, running my fingers through my hair. But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. He always had access to our letters. He knew about us. He was an art student. He could have easily copied your handwriting. Gabriella sighed, her eyes distant. He was always around. He was always the one asking questions. Always trying to insert himself into our lives. I never thought he would cross that line. But now I don't know what to believe. I stood up, walking to the window and staring out at the city skyline. My mind was racing. Everything I had believed for the past 10 years had been a lie. The pain, the heartbreak, the emptiness, I had thought it was all because of Gabriella. But now I knew that someone else had played a role. Someone who had destroyed everything we had worked for, someone who had stolen our happiness for reasons I couldn't even begin to understand. I'm going to find him, I said with a new sense of determination. I'm going to find Rodri, and I'm going to make him tell me the truth. Gabriella walked up behind me, her hand gently resting on my shoulder. Be careful, Logan. He's dangerous, I can feel it. You need to be ready for whatever comes next. I nodded, but inside I was filled with a sense of dread. The Rodri I had known was gone. The person I had considered a friend, someone I had trusted, had become a stranger to me. What had happened to him? What had changed him from the person I once called a friend to someone who would go to such lengths to destroy another person's life? I'll be careful, I promised. But I need answers. I need to know why he did this. Gabriella stood there for a moment, watching me, and then she nodded. I'll go with you. If we're going to face him, we should do it together. I looked at her, her face still so familiar, yet so different now. The woman I had loved was still there, but now she was stronger, more guarded. It was clear that the years had changed her, just as they had changed me. We had both suffered. We had both lost so much. But we still had each other, and that was what mattered now. Together, we left the hotel and drove to Rodri's last known address. The entire drive was filled with a quiet tension. Neither of us spoke much. We both knew what we were walking into. But neither of us could have predicted just how much this encounter would change everything. When we arrived at Rodri's apartment, I was surprised to see the door ajar. It was unusual for him to leave his place unlocked, especially when he wasn't home. We hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. There were no signs of life. I called out his name. Rodri? There was no answer. I took a step inside, and Gabriella followed me. The apartment looked just as it always had, except now, everything felt off. The air was thick with an unsettling silence. And then, I saw it. On the coffee table, there was a letter. A letter addressed to me. I walked over to the table and picked it up. My hands were shaking as I read the familiar handwriting. It was Rodri's. But this time, it wasn't a note of friendship. This time, it was something far darker. Logan, I know you're angry. I know you're probably asking yourself why I did what I did. But I had to. I couldn't stand to see you so happy with her. You were the one thing I could never have, and I wanted her. I wanted Gabriella. And if I couldn't have her, then neither could you. I knew about your relationship. I knew everything. I watched you two, always together, always in love. And I couldn't stand it. So, I did what I thought was right. I made sure you wouldn't be together. I switched the letters. I destroyed your happiness so that I could have a chance with her. But it never worked. And now, I'm left with the consequences of my actions. I can't take it back. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know the truth. I never meant to hurt you this much. I was just too selfish to see what I was doing. Rodri, I dropped the letter, feeling as if the world had come crashing down around me. He did this, I whispered. He destroyed us. All because he couldn't have what he wanted. Gabriella was silent beside me. Her face was pale, and I could see the anger in her eyes. This is unforgivable, she said quietly. But at least we know now. We know who did it. I nodded, my fists clenched. Rodri had been the one to tear us apart. But now that we knew the truth, it was time for us to take back what we had lost. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be painless. But I had Gabriella back. And that was all that mattered. But the question still remained, what now? Now that we knew the truth, how would we move forward? How could we ever trust again after everything that had been stolen from us? The air felt colder now. The weight of the truth was heavier than I had imagined. I stared at the letter in my hands, trying to process everything I had just read. Rodri. A man I had once called a friend. A man who had betrayed me, betrayed us, just because of jealousy. Because of his own selfish desires. And for what? For nothing. He'd spent 10 years of his life making sure I didn't get what I wanted, and for what? To be left with guilt, regret, and the knowledge that his actions had cost us everything. I couldn't comprehend it. I had always trusted Rodri. He was my roommate, my confidant. How could I have been so blind? How could I have not seen the signs? The way he always hung around when Gabriella and I were together, the way he always seemed to know too much about our relationship. I had assumed it was harmless. But now, it was all clear. The pieces fell into place. He was the one who had driven us apart. I looked up at Gabriella. She was standing beside me, her arms crossed, her face pale. What now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What do we do with this? With all this pain? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how to fix what had been broken. I didn't know how to undo the years of hurt, of lost time. It felt like too much. Too much to process, too much to carry. We had both been victims of this cruelty, this manipulation. And now, we had to figure out what to do with the wreckage left behind. We can't change the past, I said, my voice rough. But we can try to move forward. Together. We've already lost 10 years, Gabriella. 10 years that we'll never get back. But we have today. We have now. And maybe that's enough. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. For a moment, we stood in silence, both of us trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the hurt. And yet, through it all, there was something else. Something stronger. A bond that had never really disappeared, no matter how many years had passed. We still cared for each other. The love we had once shared hadn't been erased by time. It hadn't been erased by Rodri's interference. It was still there, lingering beneath the surface. I don't know if I can forgive him, she said quietly, her voice breaking. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive Rodri for what he did. For what he took from us. I didn't have an easy answer. I didn't know if I could forgive him either. Forgiveness wasn't something that could be forced. It wasn't something that could be given on command. But maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to forgive him to heal. Maybe we just needed to acknowledge the pain he had caused and choose to move forward anyway. We don't have to forgive him, I said softly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we do have to heal. We can't let him control our lives anymore. He doesn't deserve that power. Gabriella nodded, though I could see the struggle in her eyes. It wasn't easy to let go of anger, to let go of the resentment that had been building for so long. But she was right. We couldn't let Rodri's actions define us. We couldn't let his cruelty dictate the rest of our lives. I just want peace, Logan, Gabriella said, her voice filled with emotion. I want to move on. I want to build something real. I don't want to keep living in the past. I want that too, I said. But we can't do it alone. We need each other. We need to support each other through this. We stood there for a moment, the weight of the conversation sinking in. We had so much to work through, so much to rebuild. But one thing was clear, we couldn't do it without each other. We had been through so much together already. And now, we had the chance to build something new. A future that was ours, free from the lies of the past. I turned and looked out the window, watching as the city stretched out before us. It was a new beginning, a fresh start. But we had a long road ahead of us. And it wouldn't be easy. We still had to deal with the aftermath of everything that had happened. We still had to face the people who had hurt us. But we would face it together. Do you think it's possible? Gabriella asked suddenly, her voice filled with uncertainty. Do you think it's possible for us to rebuild? After everything that's happened? I didn't know. I didn't know if we could ever go back to the way things were. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let the past define me. I wasn't going to let it control my future. We had a chance to rewrite our story. And that was worth fighting for. I think we can, I said, my voice steady now. I think we can rebuild. It won't be easy, but we can do it. Together. Gabriella gave a small smile, though it was tinged with sadness. I want that. I want to believe that we can. But it feels like we've lost so much. We have, I said. But we still have each other. And that's enough to start over. She reached out and took my hand, her grip tight. Okay. Let's do it. Let's rebuild. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. It wasn't much. It wasn't the answer to all of our problems. But it was a start. And sometimes, that's all you need. A start. A second chance. We spent the next few days talking through everything. We talked about the past, about the pain we had both experienced. We talked about the future, about the life we wanted to build together. There were still so many unanswered questions. There was still so much to work through. But for the first time in a long time, we were doing it together. We were facing the future as a team. And then, just when I thought we were starting to rebuild, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. But just when we thought we were starting to put the pieces back together, a new truth surfaced, one that threatened to shatter everything all over again. Sometimes, the truth has a way of coming back, not when you're ready for it, but when it can hurt the most. The truth had always been elusive, something we were both chasing. And now, just when I thought we had finally uncovered it all, another piece of the puzzle was about to surface, something I wasn't ready for, something I couldn't have foreseen. It started with a phone call. It was late one evening. Gabriella and I were sitting in the living room, working together on some house plans for her new home, the one we had decided to design together. It was our way of starting fresh. Every line on the blueprint was a symbol of a new beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. There was a rhythm between us again, a sense of partnership that we hadn't had in years. We were working towards something real, something that mattered. But then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up, thinking it might be a client or a contractor. Hello? Logan Mitchell? The voice on the other end was familiar, but it took me a moment to place it. Yes, this is Logan, I replied, my tone cautious. Who's calling? It's Rodri, the voice said, and my stomach sank. I hadn't heard from Rodri since the day I found the letter he had written, the letter that revealed everything he had done. Everything he had taken from us. Rodri, I said, my voice tight. What do you want? I need to talk to you. In person, he said, his voice low and strained. I know I've caused a lot of pain. But I need to explain. I can't keep living with this guilt. You have to understand. I felt my heart race. I didn't want to talk to him. After everything, after the years of pain and betrayal, I wasn't sure I could. But something in his voice made me hesitate. There was an edge of desperation there, something raw and broken that I hadn't expected to hear from the man who had ruined our lives. I'm not interested in hearing your excuses, Rodri, I said, my voice firm. You've already done enough damage. I know, he said quickly, almost pleading. But this is about more than just the letters. There's more you need to know. Please, Logan, just meet me. I'll explain everything. Please, just give me one chance to make it right. The silence stretched between us. I looked at Gabriella, who had been watching me closely. She could see the conflict in my eyes, the tension in my shoulders. She didn't have to say a word. I knew what she was thinking. We had both suffered enough because of Rodri. We had both been dragged through the mess of his jealousy and manipulation. And yet, part of me knew that if I didn't hear him out now, I would always wonder what he had left unsaid. It wasn't that I believed in his ability to redeem himself, it was just that there were still so many unanswered questions, so many pieces of this puzzle left to find. I'll meet you, I said, my voice low. But don't think for one second that I'm going to forgive you. I'm doing this because I need answers, Rodri. Not because I want to hear more of your lies. He was silent for a moment before he replied, I understand. Thank you, Logan. Thank you for giving me this chance. I hung up the phone and looked at Gabriella. She didn't need to ask what had just happened. Her expression was filled with a mix of frustration and concern. She knew I was doing this to get closure. But she also knew that there was a risk involved. Rodri was still a wild card, one that we couldn't control. Are you sure about this? She asked, her voice soft. You don't have to meet him if you don't want to. I know, I replied, trying to steady my nerves. But I need to. We need to hear him out, even if I never forgive him for what he's done. We deserve to know everything. And I can't move on until I do. Gabriella nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She had every right to feel that way. We had already been through so much, and it felt like every time we tried to move forward, something else dragged us back. But this time was different. This time, I was in control. This time, I wasn't going to let the past define me. I wasn't going to let it control my future. The next day, I met Rodri at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. He was already sitting at a corner table, his hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee. He looked the same in many ways, tall, with the same sharp features I remembered. But there was something different in his eyes now. There was a heaviness there, a weight that hadn't been there before. I walked over and sat across from him, feeling the space between us. It was strange, seeing him again after everything that had happened. After everything he had done. I didn't expect you to show up, I said, my voice cool. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, he replied, his voice low. But I had to. I had to try to make things right. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at him, waiting for him to explain himself. Rodri took a deep breath and began to speak. I never wanted to hurt you, Logan. I never wanted to tear you and Gabriella apart. I was just so selfish. I thought if I could just get rid of you, if I could just take her from you, that maybe I'd be happy. But I was wrong. I see that now. I see what I've done, and I can't take it back. I can't change the past. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I listened to his words, trying to keep my emotions in check. I wanted to be angry, wanted to yell at him, but I knew it wouldn't help. His apology couldn't undo what he had done. It couldn't bring back the years that had been stolen from us. But at least he was admitting to it. At least he wasn't trying to deny it anymore. Why? I finally asked. Why did you do it? Why destroy us for your own gain? Rodri looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I don't have an excuse. I thought I could make it right. I thought if I could be with her, everything would be perfect. But it wasn't. It never was. He was silent for a moment, and I could see the guilt weighing on him. The man I had once called a friend was now a stranger, a man broken by his own choices. I felt nothing for him anymore. No anger. No sadness. Just a quiet understanding. He had caused all of this. But now, he had to live with it. I don't forgive you, I said quietly. And I don't think I ever will. But I appreciate you coming here and telling me the truth. Rodri nodded, his face filled with regret. I understand. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. I stood up, my chair scraping across the floor. I felt no sense of closure, no sense of triumph. Just emptiness. He had confessed, but it didn't change anything. The damage had already been done. Goodbye, Rodri, I said, turning to leave. Don't ever contact me again. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a strange sense of relief. The past had been dealt with. The truth had been revealed. But there was still so much to rebuild. So much we still had to face. When I got back to the house, Gabriella was waiting for me. She didn't ask what had happened. She didn't need to. We both knew that the truth had been laid bare, but that didn't mean we had all the answers. It didn't mean we knew what would happen next. But one thing was certain, we were stronger now. Together, we could face whatever came our way. And maybe, just maybe, we could finally begin to heal. Because sometimes, the hardest part of moving forward is not just letting go of the past, it's choosing to fight for the future. I left Rodri behind at that coffee shop, a man who had once been a friend, now just another part of the past I was trying to leave behind. The guilt in his eyes had been real, but it didn't change the years of hurt that had been caused by his selfishness. It didn't give us back the love, the time, the memories that had been stolen from us. I couldn't forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever, but at least I had answers. When I got back to Gabriella, she was waiting for me. The house was quiet, too quiet, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't mind the silence. She didn't need to ask about the meeting. We both knew what had happened, what had been said. The past had been laid bare. And now, it was time to move forward. I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes tired but steady, watching me as I walked into the room. She didn't ask how it went. She didn't need to. I saw everything in her expression. She had her own questions, her own thoughts, but she was letting me lead this one. Well? She asked quietly, her voice soft but filled with a kind of resolve. I took a deep breath. He's sorry. At least, he says he is. He admitted everything. But it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what he did. Gabriella nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. I didn't think it would. But at least we know. At least we can stop wondering. I sat down beside her, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, the weight of the betrayal, the years of confusion and pain. It was all too much to process in one sitting, but somehow, just being here with her, sitting beside her, made it easier. There was something about her calm presence that grounded me, made me feel like maybe, just maybe, we could move on. I don't know what's next, Gabriella, I said softly. I don't know how we can move forward. But I know one thing, I'm not doing it without you. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with warmth, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time: hope. A spark of hope. The kind of hope that comes when two people who have been through hell together finally realize that maybe, just maybe, they can rebuild. I'm not going anywhere, Logan, she said. I'm here. And I want to rebuild. I want to move forward. But we have to do it right. We have to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. I nodded, taking her hand. The future was still uncertain. But we had each other, and that was enough to give me the strength to face whatever came next. The days following my meeting with Rodri were filled with a strange quietness. I could feel the weight of the past slowly starting to lift, but it wasn't gone yet. It was still there, lingering at the edges of our lives, reminding us of everything we had lost. But it was no longer the defining force in our relationship. We were in control now. We were choosing to move forward, and that made all the difference. Gabriella and I spent the next few weeks working together on the house project. It was a slow process, but with each new design we put together, each new decision we made, we were slowly creating something that was ours. We weren't just building a house. We were building a future. And it felt good. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were on the right path. But even as we worked on the house, we both knew there were still things we needed to address. The past wasn't something that could be erased. The hurt was still there, buried deep inside us. But we were learning how to face it together, how to build something strong enough to withstand the weight of everything we had been through. One night, after we had finished a long day of work, we sat on the porch of what would soon be Gabriella's new home. The sunset was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. The air was cool, the quiet of the evening wrapping around us like a blanket. Gabriella leaned back in her chair, looking out at the view. "Do you ever wonder what could have been?" she asked, her voice soft. I looked at her, my heart aching with the thought. Every day, I admitted. I wonder what our lives would have been like if we hadn't been torn apart. If we hadn't lost so much time. But the truth is, we can't change it. We can't go back. I know, she said, her eyes still on the horizon. But sometimes, I can't help but think about it. What if Rodri had never done what he did? What if we'd stayed together? Maybe it wouldn't have worked out, I said, trying to be realistic. We don't know what the future would have looked like. But we do know what's in front of us now. She turned to me, her expression serious. What do you mean? We can't keep looking back, I said quietly. We can't keep wondering what might have been. We can only look at what we have now. We have a second chance, Gabriella. And I'm not going to waste it. Her gaze softened, and she reached over, taking my hand in hers. "Neither am I," she whispered. And in that moment, I knew. We were no longer prisoners of our past. We had faced the pain, the betrayal, and we had come out on the other side stronger. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be perfect. But it was ours. And that was enough for me. The next few months flew by. The house began to take shape, both in structure and in meaning. It was no longer just a project. It was our new beginning. It was a place where we could build a future together, where we could start fresh, free from the shadows of the past. And with each passing day, the bond between us grew stronger. We still had our moments of doubt, our moments of fear. But we faced them together. And that made all the difference. One evening, after a long day of work, we sat in the living room of the house, which was beginning to feel more like a home with each passing day. Gabriella looked at me, her eyes filled with the same warmth I had once seen in them so many years ago. "I think we're going to be okay," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. I smiled back, my heart swelling with hope. "I think we are, too." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. We were going to be okay. Because we were choosing to be. We were choosing to fight for our future. And together, there was nothing we couldn't face. And so, after everything, the lies, the heartbreak, the betrayal, Logan and Gabriella found a way to rebuild, not just their home, but their lives. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't letting go of the past, but choosing to fight for the future. And that's exactly what they did. In the end, love is more than just words or promises, it's about what you choose to build together. Logan and Gabriella's story shows us that even after the most painful betrayals, there's always a chance for new beginnings. With patience, with trust, and with a shared commitment to healing, they found their way back to each other. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But their love was strong enough to survive the test of time. And when you find someone worth fighting for, that's all you really need. So, what do you think? Could you ever rebuild after everything they went through? What would you do if you were in Logan or Gabriella's shoes? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to drop a comment below. If you enjoyed this story and want more content like this, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, so you never miss out on any of our latest stories. I'll be back soon with more heart-wrenching, inspiring tales you won't want to miss. Also, hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when the next video drops. And remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful rewards. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.